This video is brought to you by Iona, North America's premier charging network. With unmatched commitment to elevating the customer experience, Iona is opening America's roads to all EVs, giving drivers the coverage they need, the reliability they deserve, and the amenities they crave. Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. I am sure you have heard from EV drivers and enthusiasts that electric cars don't need any maintenance. Well, this video will prove them wrong, because in this video, I'm going to walk you through all of the service appointments and items that my 2022 Rivian R1T has had through its entire warranty period. I have just crossed, or just about to cross, 60,000 miles on my 2022 R1T launch edition, which means I'm now out of bumper-to-bumper factory warranty. And, well, I'm going to tell you all of the service Rivian did to get me to this point. Guys, I'm thrilled to announce that this video is brought to you by Fanttik, and specifically their V8 Apex. Those are two awesome words, V8 and Apex. You put them together equals vacuum cleaner. However, it's not just a vacuum. This is a 4-in-1 device. It's a vacuum, an air pump, an inflator, and a blower, all put together into this one, just about 1 pound package, smaller than a water bottle, super cool. This also comes with a bunch of accessories, as you can see here lined up on top of my Model 3. I have pet hair accessories, which is perfect for Blue and Ellie and Walter to get all that pet fur out of the carpets. And this is my favorite one right here. I can hook this thing up and, whoops, this way right here, and I can get it right in between the seats and get all the dirt and crap out of the carpets between the seats. This is super cool. There's two modes on this one. Eco mode will get you about 40 minutes of battery life, but if you put it all the way to max, it'll spin this thing up to 80,000 RPM, so you can get even the toughest of pet hair and dirt and grime out of your car. It's super convenient to carry this thing around. All you need to do to get one is actually head to the link in our description, use the checkout code OOSV8 Apex during your Amazon checkout, and you'll save 47% on this thing. It's super cool. We love Fanttik products. This one's awesome. It's going to be staying in my car, so thanks to them for sponsoring this. Before I get into the individual items, let me just walk you through my thought process when it comes to servicing vehicles, specifically ones that are extremely important to the channel, like this Rivian R1T. I bought this car as one of the early R1Ts, a lot of you may remember, to use for comparison tests and to have on hand. And that was the best decision really ever, because this was used in so many videos. It's been towing, it's been on tracks, it's been off-road, and it has been used well within the spider web of capability that the R1T has. This is an incredible vehicle, and I've made many videos explaining why. And it is truly the best thing I've ever spent money on. I say it all the time, but I love this truck. Best car I've ever owned, just maybe the best product I've ever purchased. So please take all of my criticism, or just sort of factual-based reporting on my service experience, with a grain of salt, because yes, I absolutely love the truck. I love what it stands for. I love the design. I love the capability, and I really do enjoy this vehicle. And I like it more than the new Rivians, actually. The early Rivians just have an extra sense of quality, in my opinion, that the new ones are missing. The next item to talk about really quick is my theory when it comes to servicing. Well, because we're using this vehicle for many comparison tests and other things, I really held Rivian to a high bar when it comes to making sure my truck stays well within the operational design of its intended use. And what I mean by that is, if anything was slightly off, I'd make an appointment and bring it in. And I'm fairly certain I can find issues with cars that most normal owners would never know. A lot of people come to me, they say, Kyle, your cars have a ton of issues, or, you know, I've had this vehicle for 5 years, I can't find anything wrong with it. And then I'll end up driving their car and I'll be like, here's a list this long of everything that's wrong with your car. And so I am here to also self-admit that I'm very particular about my cars. I use them hard, and I want them to stay perfect, or at least stay within how they're supposed to be operating and performing. And that is the point of a warranty, is to correct manufacturer defects. So if I come out to my truck and it's sitting on the bump stop, even though, yes, when I turn it on, it will fill up the airbags on the suspension, and some people may not even notice that. I'm like, no, Rivian, fix that. It's not supposed to sag when it sits for a week. So that's what I'm going to walk you through in this. Now, in total, some statistics before we get into the actual incidents or issues that I've had with this truck. It has been in for 10 separate service appointments in 60,000 miles and 3 years. Now, I probably could have brought it in more for service, but what I ended up doing with this, especially towards the later time, was waiting for issues to bulk up that weren't so important and then bringing it in when I had a bunch of issues. There's 2 reasons why. The Rivian service center closest to me is about an hour down the road, and they don't always have loaner cars available. Sometimes they'll give you Uber credits. Sometimes they'll give you a loaner. And if it's going to be a really long or in-depth process, in my experience, they've always given us a loaner, but that has not been the case for every service experience. A lot of times we've dropped it off and we just, take 2 cars down and shuttle back and forth. And so that's a little bit of a pain. The second thing that is a real noticeable trend happening right now, I did a whole video on Out of Spec Bits about this, is the wait times for service. You have to plan 8 to 10 weeks out in Denver, at least at the time of my recent service appointment, to get this thing in. And we have a Gen 2 R1S as well that my colleague Scott drives, and her service appointment was also like 5 or 6 week wait. So it might be getting a little bit quicker. I may have hit it at an off time, but man, it used to be I could call them up same day, bring it in. They'd even show up to my house sometimes with mobile service. Really doesn't feel the case anymore, where it's just easy to get service. My buddy Drew is actually having Rivian mobile service at his house right now, so I know they're still offering it. I just haven't had the ability to experience that because a lot of my issues with this truck that I've brought it in for have been mechanical. So that's just a little bit on the servicing experience for you, which I have to say, my truck has only ever been to the Denver Service Center, Denver, Colorado, and they've been wonderful to work with. I can't say enough good things about Ronan down there, who takes care of us. He's great. He's been working on this truck since the early days. So we love the people. They're awesome. And I think in general, it's a good service experience when you can get in. Guys, it's time to walk you through the 10 service appointments that I've had with this Rivian. In total, 54 separate issues in my 60,000 miles of ownership. Again, I'm very particular. Some of these, most anyone would have found. Some of these probably I only brought in because I'm in and out of new Rivians a lot in other cars, and I was very particular about this being solid. So let's start with the first ever service appointment, which was in July of 2022. Now, I took delivery in March or April of 2022, and we used it a ton over those few months, and it was fairly reliable, especially in the beginning. And the first issue only went in for one issue for my first ever appointment, and it was this piece of glass right here that needed to be replaced. And there was a wind noise issue coming from there. Honestly, still have a wind noise coming from here. Never fixed it. Totally forgot about it until I picked it up from my last warranty visit last week. And I was like, oh, should have told them that was still making wind noise. Anyway, we're pretty much out of warranty now. It's very minor. It's only when we have a crosswind, but we can live with it. Fun fact was I had the truck tinted before this window was replaced. And actually Rivian replaced this window, which meant this is an untinted piece and the rest of the truck is tinted. And they actually offered to pay for a tint replacement for me. Now, I didn't think it was worth it to bring it in. And again, I just think it's funny how this is the only untinted piece of glass on the truck. Not worth bringing it in. But now that my windshield is cracked, maybe when I'll get it retinted with the new glass, I'll have them do that panel right there. The second issue was only about a month later, in August of 2022. And this was a fairly in-depth service appointment where I was like, here, take the truck for a bit of time and really fix a bunch of stuff. So the first thing we have is the tonneau cover, or excuse me, the gear tunnel door was misaligned, which is this piece that pops out right here. This was misaligned and it was rubbing up on some of the other panels on the truck. Not on the driver's side, but actually on the passenger side. But it was that panel right there. So they did a body panel adjustment. The second concern had to do with my rear bed cover. And that is this tonneau cover. If you guys come around back here, you'll be able to see Rivian's, the R1T has this really cool power tonneau cover. This is actually a second generation, but my first generation tonneau cover had some issues. They made a slight adjustment to the pitch of these little rails that go across, and that actually fixed it. And my first generation tonneau cover lasted for a long time until they replaced it with the Gen 2. That was a notorious failure mode for these Rivians. The third issue that the truck went in for on its service appointment had to do with the hood. Now, Colton, my colleague who does the out of spec detailing channel, excuse my truck for being dirty, but it is a truck. The hoods always sag back here as the truck ages. That wasn't necessarily my issue. My issue was it was just making a lot of noise, latching and unlatching, going up and down. And did the truck go to sleep? No, there we go. And you can tell it doesn't make any noise now. It's dead silent, really great. But apparently some dirt or grime or stuff got into the latch mechanism, and they fixed the squeak by just, cleaning it, which was good, I guess. Let's see. The last concern from the body standpoint, again, has to go with the back. I'm not sure I'll continue walking back and forth through the whole video, but join me back here so I can show you this. When I click the tailgate button on the Rivian, I can hit it and the tailgate opens normally like this. It didn't do that when I bought it. And so it said the tailgate strikers were out of proper alignment and they had to do a body panel adjustment to get it in spec. The next item was the first time it went in for a fault that it has been in many times before, and that is the half shaft clunking noises. This is the original Rivian Quad-Motor Bosch motor system, and there's essentially a half shaft and a spline that connects the hub essentially to the motor, and however they interlink is just a design disaster, and they just tick, 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 tick every time you go drive in regen. Again, something I'm very particular about. I know many owners, it drives them crazy. I've been with people who have Rivians who think they're perfect. I get in their trucks and they're just ticking away on the half shafts, and it drove me insane. There's a slight delay. You can feel a little slop. And actually all four motors went in for their first ever front and rear half shaft noise, vibration, and harshness general diagnostic. And they did some stuff with some washer locks and some other fixes to all four motors to try and solve that problem. The truck, you'll find as we go through the data, has been in many times for this, and they've never been able to get it dialed in. And yeah, it's just kind of an annoyance. There's a speaker up here. This was a big service appointment. There's a speaker up here above the driver's side head, basically just to make this sort of 3D sound. It was crackling really bad, and there was an internal fault to that Meridian speaker, and they replaced that under warranty. Continuing on, holy smokes, we had a lot of issues this service appointment. Again, this is just the second time it's been in for service. Customer states they're experiencing a suspension squeak at low speeds when gently accelerating or decelerating. It said there's a slight chirp from the air suspension, and it's a natural characteristic of the vehicle. We have since come to find out all Rivians kind of make this high-pitched squeaky noise from the dampers, and this still does it. And it's had two different front suspensions on it. Now, actually, it's on its third front suspension. And, yep, that's just how they are. They just make a little bit of squeak every time you hit a bump. It's not bad in mine. I've been in other Rivians that are louder. Let's see. Customer states they are experiencing wind noise from the driver's side fixed window panel. Maybe I did ask them to bring it back or to fix that again. Maybe they replaced it a second time. Not sure. It doesn't actually show what the cause or the correction. They just billed me for a diagnostic, or didn't bill me. It was $0 under warranty. More body panels. So the front right fender quarter panel is not aligned with the front right door. So they had to do a body panel adjustment on that side of the truck, just getting all of the gaps and everything in check, which wasn't a huge concern of mine, but I figured once, since it's in there, let's just ask them to dial in the truck, because it was out of, out of spec. A separate work order item says the vehicle needed a driver front quarter glass assembly. So that's the second time they replaced this window. I totally forgot they did that. So that had been replaced twice now. And the last item of this 11-item service visit had to do with my charge port door. They are all flimsy and they don't feel very premium. For some reason, mine broke. The original one broke, and they had to replace that whole assembly. And mine, I would just have to sort of manually pull it in and out in order to charge the truck. So that's one hell of a service visit. Again, $0, everything under warranty. Yeah, 11 items in that particular one. Then we go another month and a half to the next service item, which actually had to do with a recall. If you guys remember, there was an issue with the front upper control arm, and the steering knuckle retention fastener on each front wheel needed to be properly torqued. It was super easy. I actually made a little video or podcast about it at the time. It was a big talk. Rivian was recalling all their vehicles. I pulled into the service center when I was down in Denver for something already. 3 minutes in and out, torqued my suspension, and I was good. But that is certainly one of the items that I brought it in for that, and they did that at no cost, of course, because it was a recall. The next service appointment happened on January of 2023, and I am going to run through this for you right here. So the first item on the list was my center caps were missing. Now, normally I run the 22-inch sport wheels on my truck. These are actually Drew's all-terrain wheels that I've stolen from him, a good friend of mine. But the center caps keep falling out of those wheels. Every time I'd go through the touchless car wash or even just hit a bump, the center caps would fall off. They've never been able to fix it. It's just happened throughout the entire truck. So I would just, every time I was in, have them replace the center caps. I told them my horn wasn't working. As you can tell, it is working right now. However, when there's a lot of wind pushing against the truck, or it's really cold or raining, the horn degrades in performance. It's still the case today. There are certain conditions of which the horn just stops working entirely, and it mostly happens when it's cold, and it's not just my truck. I've driven other Rivians that when they're in odd adverse conditions, the horn stops working. They actually say when you drive through water, they want you to hold the horn on for a few seconds, which kills the quiet nature vibe, but that's to flush out the unit of water. So I've always done that. The next item was our auxiliary air compressor stopped working. In the bed of the truck, there is a sort of, not the air suspension compressor, but an aux compressor that I can use to fill up tires or whatever with, just an air compressor. That had actually filled up with water somehow and fried the pump. They replaced my auxiliary air compressor, and that worked really well. There was a service request internally to replace the forward clip tower on left hand and right hand upper C-pillar trim panel. So that's back here, I guess. That was just an internal thing that they did since it was in there. So the next item had to do with the headliner, and I said it didn't match up on the driver's side, so they readjusted my headliner by removing it and reinstalling it. I actually just brought it in the last service appointment for another headliner issue, so maybe they didn't reinstall it properly on that particular one. And then the last item on this particular service visit in January of 2023 was the vehicle was sagging when parked for a period of time. So you can see I have it parked in high suspension right now. Normally I park the vehicle in standard suspension height. If I didn't drive it for a week or two, we were traveling, I would notice the truck would sag all the way down. It's not just this truck. Drew's truck does the same thing. And I just think, you know, it's not in the garage at the moment. Actually, where is our Range Rover? Judy? No, the Louis, the Range Rover. He's over here? Oh, okay. So one of the Range Rovers is in for service. This Range Rover is notorious for having air suspension problems. If the L322 Range Rover can sit without sagging, but my Rivian can't, then we've got an issue. So I brought it in and I said, guys, my truck keeps falling down when I park it. Can you figure out what's going on? And they said they monitored the air suspension over weekend. Finish stories once satisfied that the issue is remedied. Okay. Anyway, they replaced the front left strut on the vehicle due to sagging issue, and they monitored the suspension over another weekend, and the sagging was no longer present. So they did a air suspension compressor replacement completely, a front left damper and air spring complete replacement on the left side. So that's pretty wild that we got a new air suspension compressor and a front left strut situation there. That was it for that service appointment. The next went in about 2 or 3 months later. This is March of 2023, and it was a recall situation. I think they actually came up to my house to do this one, if I remember correctly. Let's see if it says, yeah, this was at 28,000 miles, and it doesn't say where it happened, but I think this was maybe the one mobile service that I had. But they essentially had to inspect a right-hand seatbelt automatic locking retractor sensor. My truck did not require a replacement, so nothing needed there. So, you know, 1 out of these 10 service appointments actually resulted in no action taken. Then 3 months after that, in the middle of 2023, I brought it in for a for a service appointment, and we had a couple things. The concern says perform inspection, perform front subframe inspection, engineering investigation, front subframe inspection. I don't remember what was going on with that. I think that was also another recall where they were looking for potential weak faults in all Rivians. So they inspected this and they didn't find anything as far as I can tell. I asked for them to replace my wiper blades, so they charged me $64.22 to replace my both wiper blades up here. There was a issue to replace the half shaft washers. So another issue with the half shafts on this visit that it went in for. And they did ting washers, rear, front, bolts, other stuff. So all 4 half shafts there. And that was also tied to my concern on the half shafts were ticking, clicking, and rocking aggressively. This is an issue with already one previous occurrence, and they said the concern was addressed by an internal fix that they called FSAM-407, completed on line 5. Let's see, I ordered 20-inch tires, and I got a fresh set of tires from them, I guess. Actually, I think those are these tires right here that I put on Drew's wheels. So that cost me $1,719.20 for 4 all-terrain tires. But again, still Drew's wheels. Let's see. And then concern that the center caps keep falling off the wheels again. They didn't charge me for that. And that was the end of that service appointment there. Then the next month, again, it went in because, yeah, let's see what happened this time. The tailgate trim fell off the tailgate. Oh, I remember this. We're talking about the upper piece of my tailgate. And again, I am saying we use our truck. You can see even the new one's got a bunch of scratches in it, but this piece had fallen off the back of the Rivian, and they replaced it. And this is that piece they replaced it with. The second item is that I said the front grille shutters were making noise on the front of the truck. So up front, there's these active shutters up here. And essentially every time you need the cooling system or aero or whichever, they open and close, they're making a ton of noise. So I guess they replaced those and we're good to go. Then there was a long time until the next service appointment. It wasn't until March of 2024 after that. So we've gone almost 3/4 of a year without service appointment. And there was a couple things they did here, 8 pages worth, although there's a lot of fluff in these pages. So they did another field service action to replace a tire sealant kit. They went back in for the half shafts again. They installed washers on 4 half shafts to try and fix those once again. Every time they would do something to the half shafts, it would be quiet when I would leave the delivery center. All it would take is one launch, hard acceleration, or about 500 miles of normal driving, and the ticking would come back every time. They could get it dialed in, but they couldn't hold it without making noise. I thought that was unacceptable, so I kept asking them to fix it and fix it and fix it because it drives me insane to have all these things clicking under the truck every time you drive. An electric car should have a nice, comfortable driving experience. So they were, did the ting washers again. I had an issue. Okay, this was interesting. Every time I'd put the Rivian into drive, I would get a message pop up saying Bluetooth key not working. Meanwhile, it was working. My phone as a key was working fine. It was just popping up with a message saying, hey, Bluetooth key not working. And what they found was that the module, antenna, vehicle access, rear fascia, remove and replace, So they replaced some Bluetooth module in the truck, and that fixed it right there. And there was also another recall, which had to do with the accelerator pedal sensor. And so they replaced my accelerator pedal, and that seemed to have solved that problem. They also found on their own, I didn't ask them this, when it was in for service, the left rear damper was leaking. Again, it's a very complicated suspension setup with hydraulic and air and a lot of, craziness going on here. And this truck has had a lot of little suspension issues. And so my left rear damper, and there was a damaged harness somehow, had to be replaced. So what they did there was they were remove and replace the damper, drain and refill the hydraulic fluid, remove and replace the harness and wheel liner in the rear left-hand side, and then they test drove it for 10 minutes to fix that issue. Another wheel center cap had fallen off on this visit. So yes, it went in for another wheel center cap. And I said I would like to get my tonneau cover replaced because this was when my Gen 1 tonneau cover had failed. And this was right around the time when the Gen 2 tonneau cover had just come out, and mine got the replacement and upgrade to Gen 2. There was a period of time when if your Gen 1 tonneau cover failed, Rivian had no fix. They would just lock it into place and say good luck because they were still working on engineering the Gen 2. Thankfully, my Gen 1 tonneau cover held on just until the Gen 2 tonneau covers came out. Now we're on to a Gen 3 tonneau cover. That's way better than even this one is here. But a lot of people couldn't get tonneaus fixed. It was a real problem. Thankfully, this broke right at the perfect time for my use. And they... didn't charge me anything for that visit at all. The next appointment happened in July of 2024, and I think this is when I broke it. Well, there was a couple maintenance items on this one, so let's see. The first item was the alignment was off. So they did an alignment, then charged me $260 to do a four-wheel alignment on the truck, so they got that dialed in. I asked, or they put in a courtesy inspection. I don't know if I requested that or not, but that was on there. Half shafts again. And so the correction was some front suspension change and more just on more washer replacements, greasing, washers, more half shaft work again. And it always just keeps popping up. I brought it in for warped rotors. I had, had the truck on track and driven it hard and done a bunch of stuff, and the rotors basically needed to be replaced. So I did new pads and rotors, and all of that together was, let's see if I did front and rear. Front, maybe just fronts. Yeah, fronts, $736 for new brakes up front. There was another field service action, sort of recall campaign situation, that required me to bring in my portable charger, my mobile EVSE with this truck, and they cleaned and fixed that or did something new. 3 new seals. Okay, great. I guess the Bluetooth fix from the previous appointment didn't do anything, so I brought it again, and I was like, hey, the same Bluetooth message keeps popping up. And this time they replaced my antenna for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, the entire instrument panel, and that's it. Access and authentication, general diagnostic, internal Wi-Fi, antenna. So that's what happened there. This is exactly when I damaged the truck from off-roading. I sent it a little bit too hard off-road and dinged up the backside of the truck, and it needed a new parking sensor, wiring harness, and corner radar, and a rear fascia. I'll show you what happened. It all had to do with back here. I basically was on a really steep incline, and I didn't have the departure angle, and I knocked the hell out of the underside of the truck back here, popped a parking sensor out, damaged the underside of this. All of that in total really wasn't too bad considering, because if I had nicked any bit of the metal, this could have been thousands of dollars and a long wait for repair. But all of that was $1,762, which, yes, it's a lot of money for a bumper cover and a parking sensor, but I also got a radar, wiring harness. I felt like that was pretty reasonable for the fix, honestly. I had an issue where the truck would actually randomly not charge on DC charging, especially when the battery was hot. I was getting faults. I would leave it on my 40 kilowatt DC charger. It would derate to 1 or 2 kilowatts. It was just very odd, weird behavior from a charging perspective. They found that my truck had low refrigerant. And so they evacuated and recharged my refrigerant level and got that working totally fine, which did solve the problem. I haven't had it happen since, so maybe it's good. The nice thing is the battery is still under warranty. I'm about halfway through my battery warranty, and I believe a lot of those things will continue to be covered. Let's see, there was a gear tunnel trim missing that we must have ripped off. They charged me 20 bucks to get a new piece. And then I also found that my sound system started to progressively sound worse. And, you know, it happened so slowly that I'm like, is it me? Am I just driving the Cybertruck or other vehicles now and the sound system sounding worse? Actually, there was a fault with my amplifier and they had to replace my premium amplifier with another Meridian unit. So my amplifier went out in the truck and that was that service bill. So all in all for that service visit, $2,700 for the brakes and the bumper fix. That was the most expensive service visit of this car's life. The next service visit was the last one. I think it is the last one. Yes. And that was, so it was almost a year between service visits. Let's just double check that really quick. Yeah, just about 10 months between the last service visit, and then I bulked up all the problems for the grand finale, the last visit under warranty for this thing. Now, I made a post on Twitter that I'm like, I had Rivian go through everything on this truck. They didn't proactively go through and find any issues on this truck. I just gave them a super long list and said, hey, here are all my problems. By the way, Rivian service is great to us. We know the people there, but it's not like they're giving us any extra special treatment, in my impression, for this truck, because I had to wait like 9 weeks to get in for service. They had my truck for almost a month to complete this. Like it's not the best service experience. Yes, I'm very grateful they gave me a loaner car, but I booked it way in advance with a loaner and they have not been afraid to tell me loaners are not available. So even though I do make Rivian videos and videos about cars in general, I feel like my ownership or my service experience isn't really influenced by those videos. That's not to say that not everyone has the best service experience. A good friend of mine, Michael, and others have good experiences, but bad trucks. Some other friends of mine have really bad service experiences. But in general, I can only report on what happens here, and I try to go through the normal customer process. So the last service appointment, I said the vehicle is sagging when parked for a few days. And they said, yes, we found that happened, and they replaced the entire front suspension. So all front left and front right suspension completely replaced. And I have to say, it hasn't sagged since. I've parked it in standard suspension for like 3 or 4 days now, and it's been at the same height that I've left it at. So I'm very, very happy there. I said there was a grinding and growling noise coming from the screen in front of me, which was funny. And they found that there was a worn fan that powers the screen causing noise, and also an air temperature sensor that needed to be replaced. Now, since that air temperature sensor has been replaced, I've noticed that sometimes the AC takes a minute to crank up and go full blast. It could also be temperature changes or software, but there's definitely something different with the HVAC on the truck. Maybe it's operating as designed now. I'm not sure. I said that there was a rattling noise coming from this dash piece right here. Apparently that's a known issue, the defrost panel contacting the upper dash pad. Mine had never been replaced because I brought the issue up to them. They said, no problem. And they put that on there. That must be like, if a customer states they have an issue, fix it with this, because Ronan, my service advisor there, who's awesome, was like, oh yeah, we know all about that dash rattle. We'll get it sorted. Awesome. Really great. I brought it in yet again for half shafts, and I told them, guys, I want to stop bringing this thing in for half shafts. It happens 500 miles after every single service appointment. You gotta do something here. And they called some engineering people. They're like, man, this thing keeps coming in. They said the front half shaft to hub mating surface was worn, and they replaced the front hubs, seals, and half shafts and bearings on all the motors. So it's got a whole new driveline connection system all 4 times over. And all 4 of them were making noise. And they were, when I pulled this thing into the service bay, you know, they had to verify the noises. They can't just fix stuff unless they find the problem. And I'm like, guys, I want you to hear what I'm talking about. And they got on the ground, and I inched this thing back and forth a ton in the service bay. And they're like, yep, I hear the clicking here. Yep, I hear the clicking here, and so on and so forth. And they confirmed that we found the fault. I just made sure that I was there to show them the fault, because I'm like, look, this is it. I don't think the half shaft tick is covered under powertrain warranty, because it technically might be or might not be. Let me know in the comments below if you think it's covered continually or not. I think it's just the high voltage components being like motors actually failing, or the battery pack having an issue under that one. Okay, the next item was this black plastic glossy trim. It's actually metal, it's not plastic. Fell off on the passenger side. Something must have snagged it, and it was flapping in the wind, and I ended up pulling the whole thing off, knowing that they could replace that. They replaced that under warranty, which is great. Again, yes, the truck is wrapped, but I don't believe the wrap could have interfered with that. Maybe it did. They seemed to say it was kind of a known thing, and it was a warranty item, which I was happy with. Yep, there was an issue with my headliner on the front passenger side. This is where I brought up the headliner issue again. It was sagging on the front passenger side, and there's some magnets in there that just weren't attached properly. So they reattached the magnets, and we were good to go. I said I'd like a replacement cabin air filter. It was $35. And because they held on to my truck for a month, they said, don't worry, we're not going to bill you the $35. Thought that was super nice of them. But that was the only sort of goodwill customer satisfaction. Yeah, they said goodwill provided in the interest of customer satisfaction for a non-warrantable concern. Thanks for my cabin air filter, Rivian. But they held on to my truck about 2 weeks longer than I expected it, and I thought that was a fair compromise. Now, this was one I was really excited about. I brought the truck in this last time because ever since I bought the truck, the wheel would wobble going down the highway, the steering wheel, and it still wobbles. But they said they knew about that being a concern on early trucks. And they also said that my truck had the early unweighted steering wheel, and there was a new updated steering wheel with a weight in the bottom that's supposed to not necessarily cure that issue, but at least dampen the shaking. And I was like, oh, cool. Does that mean I'm getting a new steering wheel? They said yes, and I have a brand new steering wheel. A lot of you guys know I hate greasy and nasty wheels. Brand new steering wheel at 60,000 miles on my truck. Very happy with that. A really great fix. So if you want to get a new wheel and you have an early Rivian, just say it's shaking, I guess. That's all I did. The shake is still there, by the way. Didn't really fix it, but I've got a new wheel, and I'm happy about that. There probably is no real fix. I think that's more of a design fault of these early Rivians with this wheel shake. Our Gen 2 still does it a bit, but it's a lot better. And that is it. That is the entire servicing history of this truck. Definitely under, $5,000 worth of maintenance stuff, issues that I've caused to it to get it to this point. No oil changes or coolant changes, not until 125,000 miles do the motors need new coolant on the Bosch quad-motor systems. But that was quite an exhaustive list, and I think you would agree with me, not every single one of those items was absolutely required or necessary, but in my case, I hope you'll understand that I really do want the truck, or any of my cars that I have under warranty, performing as manufacturer intended. I do the same thing with my Polestar. I've done the same thing with my Teslas. I just bring them in, and I really try to hold the manufacturer to the standard of maintaining my vehicle to how it should be designed and operating. And in general, I would say until I went through this list, my gut feeling on the Rivian was a fairly reliable product. There was actually no single issue that ever left me stranded with this truck. It never completely broke down on me. It never gave me any crazy problems. The closest problem that I got to that was when the battery would randomly have some charging bugs, and it really only ever happened if it was DC charging for multiple hours, like on a 40 kilowatt unit where it just sits flat out, or on a very hot day when towing above 95% state of charge, and even that could have been some BMS sway issues. In general, I feel like it's a pretty rock solid powertrain with very minimal degradation. We'll get into more of that when we do our 3-year ownership update. But in terms of servicing, that's everything it's taken to get my Rivian to this point through its warranty period. I'm really curious if there's other Rivian owners who want to chime in. Have you had more issues, less issues? Are you paying as close attention as maybe I am, really trying to get them to fix everything? Or are you more a casual driver who can live with a couple little squeaks or rattles or noises here or there? Very curious to see what you have to say down below. My impression, I would easily and happily buy another Rivian in a second. I would love to see quicker service times, and I do think the quality of this early truck is amazing, and it's kind of gone downhill a bit for Gen 2. I've been saying it for a while, and we do have a Gen 2 R1S that had issues. It went in for service. We just got it back, and I've heard it's 100 times better. So an update coming on Scott's R1S to this channel very soon as well. So there you have it. Thanks so much for watching. That's 3 years of servicing with my Rivian. We'll see you on another one again soon. Bye-bye.